Hey everybody, special treat for you today on Dry Fire Monday. And I'm here with the XO, with Stephannie.
Yay!
We just came back from a weekend event in San Diego, which was a great Survive the Fight tour. Again, Firearms Legal Protection sponsoring that, and Army Quality hosting that. And but today we're back at the ASP corporate headquarters with Stephannie talking about our dry fire stuff. And you guys know that Mantis has sponsored us getting better with dry fire for the last like 9 months, 8 months. And I'm stoked about that. But I think Stephannie, because of her particular situation in life, has a unique perspective on this. And we want to talk about safety and security with your dry fire, but also about effectiveness with your dry fire. So let's talk about it. The Mantis X firearms training system is used by everyone from defensive shooters to competitive shooters to even U.S. military special forces. You can train like each one of those groups and get better between range trips. All right, so tell us about what is unique in your situation, Stephannie, and why security and focus in your dry fire is more difficult than most to come by.
Well, I think we all, have different reasons why dry fire is difficult. My particular situation, or can be difficult, is that I have a very high needs son. He needs 24/7 supervision that almost entirely falls on me. And we talk about dry fire being a way that you can do things that you can't do at your range. You can be drawing, you can be moving around, doing all kinds of things, but it's still an inherently dangerous activity. Many times you're still using a live firearm. Many of us are using our carry guns that we've unloaded and made safe, and so you still really need to be mentally focused. You need to have a safe space, a safe backstop, and that can be a challenge for people. And the idea of, I know very often my mind is divided at home. I'm trying to do different things, whether it be working, whether it be doing home things, and keeping an eye on my son. And that's very difficult for me to start thinking about, okay, now I'm gonna get this firearm out, I'm gonna make it safe, I'm gonna do dry fire, when my mind is still trying to listen to where my son is and what he's doing.
And if I interject, okay, if you get to meet Stephannie, her husband Neil's son, he's great. He's just a fantastic kid. He's 13, and but he literally, I mean, if you give him 3 minutes, he can be driving his lawnmower into the car. I mean,
for sure,
he really can.
For sure. Yep. I mean, yeah. He will leave a wake of destruction that can be dangerous to himself and others. Yeah, and so it's important that I stay on top of it, and I don't want to get started and then have my mind distracted, set something down, do something foolish, and then have an accident happen. Of course, we always have that redundancy that we're building into our dry fire and practice and classes and everything else. But I can't just say, oh, I'm always firing at a safe backstop, so it's not a big deal if I'm distracted, or oh, my finger's off the trigger until I'm ready. If you just start thinking that, well, because I'm so safe, it's fine, well, that's when you start having accidents, and we hear about them with some frequency,
we do.
And I read too many stories about people not being careful with their firearms and little kids killing themselves, killing parents, other people. That's, at that point, you've made your life demonstrably worse by having a firearm present. So I keep safety and security at a very high priority. So for me to find time where I can be mentally focused and 100% safe is a challenge to me. I don't get near as much dry fire practice as I would like to get because of that.
Well, and I mean, many of us have similar challenges. My firearms have to stay locked up because of, some challenges we've had in the mental health world in our home. So everything has to stay locked up, everything has to be secured all the time. And so, finding that time and finding that ability and making sure everything's safe all the time is difficult. So how do you solve that problem?
Couple of different ways. I do get breaks. My husband does spend time with my son out of the, although it's much better if he's out of the house because I'm still kind of listening and
She's a mom. She's never
mom's always on duty if anybody's around. So I do have time when I just go ahead and do whatever I need to do. Another thing is I do have just a CO2 gun that it's a totally different color. I know exactly what it is. It's easy for me to pick up off a shelf and use it and set it right back down. It doesn't look anything like any of the firearms that we have in our house. And yet it's got a nice long heavy trigger, and I combine that with the Mantis unit because it is a CO2 gun, so I can use it with CO2, and it will register that and give me feedback on that because getting to the range is also another challenge for even live fire. So I get a little recoil management that way. But that for me is easy to pick up and use. The Mantis the Mantis at this point is not made to register CO2 guns without the CO2 in it. However, it will a good share of the time, almost.
Depending on the airsoft, depending on the gun you get and how much click it gets, right? Because the unit is measuring a click.
Right,
you know.
right. And I have a nice big heavy click. It's a nice long trigger.
Good.
It's much more difficult trigger to manage than my carry gun. So I feel like that is a good solution for that. But because I get less than I would like, I find the Mantis to be a really invaluable tool for that. I can really focus what I'm doing and make it count rather than just sit there mindlessly pulling a trigger. I can really work.
So an interesting thing that we're segueing into talking about now. So, okay, finding some quiet time can be a challenge for all of us, making sure that you have some time. And sometimes we go, oh, okay, well, I get 30 minutes a day. I mean, we watch Brian Hill, for instance, do this 2 hours of dry fire training a day.
Every day.
What a beast.
And you can tell that he does it.
Shows up in his shooting, right? For some of us, that's just not possible. But if we get 10 minutes 3 times a week, that might be what we get. So now we're talking about making the most of the time that you have. So I agree with you. I think for me, rather than, it was an interesting thing that we heard in class this week, that a student said, well, gosh, man, before taking a class, like dry fire just felt boring and repetitive. But now that I have actually something to work on, then it's engaging. Well, I mean, to me, okay, so I've taken a bunch of classes. You've taken a bunch of classes. And Stephanie's going to get almost 100 hours of firearms training this year. So, but to say, okay, I have something to work on. I have an objective standard that I can track over time, and I'm not just clickety, 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 click because I'm supposed to do this. But I have a standard, so I have to pay attention to my things and do it. It's important.
It is important. Excuse me, and that's one of the things we really do try to bring to our classes. This is how we got to this point. This is how you maintain where we're at right now. And this is how you get better. And the objective standards is one of those things. If you don't know how quickly you should be practicing your draw, you're just randomly doing it. We gave people numbers this weekend. This is where you should be working. And then continue from there. But if you're slower than this or whatever, stay right here. So I think that that's really important. And the Mantis is a great way to get some objective measurements. And they have all those drills, different things. If I didn't really have time to prepare a great, this is what I'm working on today, I can pull up some of the different drills and run through them. It stores all your different data from all the different times you've done that. And so I find that I can get a lot of practice in a short time with minimal mental space from me.
Well, and the 3 drills that we use in the Survive the Fight, Surviving a Gunfight class, we start with Gila Hayes 5x5 drill. Then we move on to the first 5 dots of dot torture. Which is 23 rounds, and then we move on from there to a draw to first shot on basically an A-zone hit at 5 yards, and how long those take. And all 3 of those, I think, are something that, first of all, have measurable results. We have an objective number. And then the second thing there is I can work in my dry fire to get ready, and when we show up to live fire, it's a vastly improved world if you've done the work in dry fire.
For sure, and we find that over and over again in our dry fire challenge group on Facebook, people saying that the dry fire has improved them immensely as shooters, or I haven't had enough time to get out in live fire for several months, and I found I either didn't lose or I even gained skill and competency just through dry fire. The best shooters I know spend a significant, in fact, far more than they spend in live fire time dry firing. It is a daily discipline for them, and they do it. But for somebody that doesn't really, have a plan or know what to do and is just, pulling that trigger over and over again, it's so boring. It's really boring. And I find that the Mantis really helps with that, between the different drills, between the community, between the feedback. Even for a really novice user, you get a lot of information in good directions to move and improve.
Well, and you can take it to the range too. So you can use it live fire as well to see, what am I doing? The thing that I've been using it for recently is, I chunk, right? So I may not do everything all at the same time, especially because we don't have a magazine plate adapter for 15-round P30 mags right now. And guys at Mantis, I'm talking to you for a moment. Let's figure that one out, shall we? For your shameless industry show. They have one for the 10-rounders, but it doesn't work on the 15s. So,
10-rounders.
And I live in free America. Nobody wants 10-rounders. But anyways, so I chunk from hands together, drive the gun out, take the first shot, right? That's the most important. Or drive the gun out, take 2. Drive the gun out, take 3. And seeing that, I can measure that in live fire as well, because I can do it here in dry fire in the dry fire dojo, get a certain amount of measurement of here's where I am in dry fire. Now I got to go out and try to match those numbers in live fire. And for most people, their numbers tank in live fire. But for me, I'm going, no, I'm going to keep my muzzle orientation. I'm going to drive the gun exactly the same. And I have an objective measurement of that. I think that's really helpful.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's one of the great things about the unit. For me, even getting to the live range can be a challenge as well. But even using like the CO2 guns with CO2 in them, adding an extra challenge to that, I find really helpful. Just like you say, continuing to try to keep your numbers steady, adding more issues to deal with, more things to process.
Well, and you know, so here's my challenge to you this week. Okay, so I think that if there's going to be somebody doing a good bit of dry fire, honestly, it's probably more dudes than moms, and moms will have a bigger challenge with this. But here you have a mom of 5, including a high needs kid, a kid who literally 24/7 needs supervision, but who finds the time to get it done, and is a great shooter because you've put in the work. Yeah. And it's the funny part to me is sometimes we step on the range, like we were at Survive the Fight tour, and you know, folks will look at it, and of course I'm expected to be able to shoot, right, and demonstrate in those kind of things. But when she does, everybody goes, okay, I don't have an excuse anymore. I gotta freaking get after it, because like she's a regular human being and not a YouTube celebrity, right? Although she's as responsible for it as I am. And get after it. So here's the challenge, is find your space this week to get some objective measure. Now, of course, if you have a Mantis unit, easy peasy, right? Strap your Mantis on, light up your app on your phone or on your tablet or whatever, and get some objective measurement, and then work from that objective measurement to something else. If you don't, that's okay. You have to work a little harder for some objective measurement in dry fire, and that might be number of presses where you know you get the right side alignment, side picture, where you can call that shot, and just finding that time. Something I'm working on right now is getting that draw to first shot practice of smooth and consistent, smooth and consistent, smooth and consistent, and then to as fast as I can with my dry fire tools, then get set up for the day to carry and go, so that I'm not cold if God forbid I have to use my gun. So get that. That's for you this week. And XO, dude, thanks for coming on the show. She's normally behind the scenes, but I coaxed her in front of the camera today so that we can see. So stay safe. Make sure that you do that. Get a little bit of time and use it to get better, guys. Have a great week.